it's Lizzie from Old Stables Crafts. Thank you very much for joining me again today. Today I've got another 3D project for you. I keep forgetting to do 3D projects. And the best laid plans and all those things, because we have a retiring list at the moment and because things are selling faster than you can blink, I keep having to check the retiring list to make sure that what I had planned to use is still available. And I had planned to use the Come Sail Away Memories and More cards for this project today, and this is the one that I made originally. Sold out. So have the Magnolia Lane. Sold out. So instead of that, we're going to be using the Tropical Oasis Memories and More card pack, which is full of all sorts of lovely summer images. This, at the moment when I'm filming this, is still available. Hopefully it will be still available by the time this video goes up. So, the top is a Memories and More card. And I've just popped it up on dimensionals just to give it a bit of oomph. I wanted this to be a mail project, and the second one was going to be a mail project as well. But, hey, as I say, best laid plans. So I'm using I used on this the matching designer series paper just to make a nice mail orientated box. So instead of that, we are going to be using this Memories and More card, the Tropical Oasis designer series paper. My brain went there for a moment because I've just realised I've got sticky, get my sticky eraser and erase my sticky. I really need to change this grid paper, but hey, I'll get one more project out of it. So this is the card. I'm going to be using Real Red because Real Red is one of the colours in the designer series paper. I thought it was Poppy Parade, but it's not. It's Real Red. And if you look at this, is this an ugly fruit? I think it's an ugly fruit. And I don't mean I think it's the fruit is ugly. I think it's an ugly fruit. But if you look at this, particularly there, it is definitely Real Red. And that's the joy, of course, of stamping up colours and products, is that they all match. So this is the card I'm using, this is the paper I'm using, and this is the card that I am using on the top. This is the only paper that I had left that I haven't already earmarked for something else from the pack that I had enough of. So that's why we're using that. Right, so on with the project. 2 pieces of card. You do need 2 sheets of cardstock, whether you're using International A4 or 8.5 by 11. You can cut this out of 2 sheets and still have quite a bit left over. The finished box, let me just bring that back in, is 5 inches. Had to think there for a minute. 5 inches by 4 inches by 2 inches. So it's a good size box. The card is 3 by 4. So it's an inch wider in each direction and then 2 inches deep. The lid is only 1 inch deep. Just so it's, you know, occasionally I like to do lidded boxes like that. And I'm going to start by telling you the dimensions, which will be on my website linked below. But then I'm going to change the dimensions. So start with a piece of cardstock that is 7 inches by 6 for the lid, and a piece of cardstock for the base that is 9 by 8. And I'm going to cut this one down. Now, I have spoken about this before, and I'm going to speak about it again. In order to get a snug lid, and you will, I hope, agree that this is a nice snug lid, you either need to make the lid slightly bigger or the base slightly smaller, or use a shim when you're scoring, and it all gets terribly complicated. Or you can do what I do, which is just trim 1/16, yes, I mean 1/16, one of these tiny little blips off the edge of your cardstock. So this is 8 inches, so I'm going to bring it back to 7 15/16. And then I'm going to trim it off, and then I'm going to do exactly the same on my 9 inch side. So I'm going to make that 8 15/16 and trim that off. And that tiny little piece of paper will make all the difference to the finished fit. But it's so much easier than faddling around with shims and things. I do have on my Simply Scored, so this is my Simply Scored, I do have a shim. It's this. It's just a piece of chipboard and you can pop it up against there. But it's just so much easier not to bother. So my piece of card I'm going to score at 2 inches on all sides, or each side. So the box is actually going to be very fractionally smaller than 5 by 4. But we are talking tiny, 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 tiny differences. So, and when I'm making a box that's got this sort of layout rather than the pizza box, I do like to just turn my card anyway, because no one can cut card exactly right. So if you make sure, I'm scoring this at 1 inch, so if you make sure that you always score with the side butted against the edge. So if I score here at 1 inch and here at 5 inches, it's actually, I can even see here, it's not quite right. So much, much safer to turn your card and score each of the 4 sides separately. So pop that back down. First thing to do with any of these sort of boxes is to fold and burnish your score lines so that they are nice and crisp. And I'm going to do both the lid and the base before I start cutting. I'm making this into one of my, I think they've become famous now, Catherine wheel boxes. And if you're new to my channel, first, if you're new to my channel, please subscribe. Bottom left, right hand corner, there's a subscribe button. And if you are new to my channel, welcome. So what do I mean by a Catherine wheel box? So we're going to cut the squares, because we've got rectangles and squares, so a square in each corner. And I always cut so that I'm cutting into the rectangle, so I cut away the score line. So I'm going to cut to the left of that score line, and then I'm going to cut the score line away and just into a point. So if you're into dressmaking, it's like a dart on a dress. It's that sort of, you know, little pointy, slithery bit. You don't need to take very much off. It's just a little bit so that you get a better finish. And this is where the Catherine wheel comes in, because I'm now turning and cutting. So rather than, so I'm cutting into the square on each rectangle rather than only on 2. So rather than cutting here and here, I'm Catherine wheeling. So it will make more sense when I've finished, probably. So wedge and then cut away the score line so the rectangle has none of the score line on it. So again, tiny little wedge away. I'll cut it straight and then wedge again. So normally I would wedge and then cut, because they go round and round. So can you see what I mean by a Catherine wheel? So if this was a Catherine wheel, it would be doing that. And I'm going to do exactly the same on the base. So again, we've got rectangles and squares, and I'm going to be cutting into the cutting the edge off this square, but then cutting straight up. Cutting straight up the score line, leaving the score line to the right of my scissors, so that this is a straight edge with none of the score line attached to it. You get a much neater finish if you cut away your score line. So again, wedge and cut up so the score line is to the right of your scissors, and then wedge your score line out. And again. And part of the reason that I do this is, depending on the dimension of your box, you could end up with the sides overlapping in the middle. So if you bring your squares in, they could overlap in the middle, which means you're going to end up with a very bulky end and a less bulky end, a straight end. So it just doesn't make the lid sit quite so nicely if you've got extra bulk at the ends. I hope that makes sense. Don't know whether it does or not. My husband and I are trying very hard not to put weight on, generally. And we're doing that whether or not we're in lockdown, which we are still in lockdown. So once a week we eat very little, and today's that day, and my brain just isn't working properly. Okay, so this is our base. So I'm going to bring in the pieces of designer series paper that I need for my base, which are those 4. These are, so you've got 2 of each size. These are cut at 4 3/4 by 1 3/4 and 3 3/4 by 1 3/4. Now there is a right and a wrong way up. It took me by surprise. The pineapples are basically all going up, so I need to make sure that I follow that through. I'm going to use snail as much as anything for speed because it's just quicker. So snail it will be. You can use liquid adhesive, you could use tear and tape, but as I say, for the sake of speed, I'm going to go for snail. So this is the bottom of my box. This is the bottom of a pineapple. So that goes towards the bottom. And you want your paper as centrally as you can get it. And again, now you can actually see which is the right way up and the wrong way up on the back of the paper because we've got this pineapple print. So even if you haven't got a pineapple on the front, you can see which way your pineapples are going and make sure that the bottom of the pineapple is at the bottom of your box. There. And then just these 2, and then we can stick our box together. It is much, much easier to stick your paper on before you build your box, because that means you're sticking your paper onto a flat surface, as opposed to trying to attach it to something that is 3-dimensional, which is not as easy somehow. Can't think why I think it's not as easy, but it's not as easy. And again, pineapples at the bottom, or bottom of the pineapple towards the bottom. And there we go. I'm going to do the designer series paper for the lid as well, while we're doing snail. So for these, you will probably need more adhesive than I'm going to use, but just for speed, because I know this is not the single most exciting bit of what we're doing. So my pineapples, I want this time running up the way. So, oops, and I need my designer series paper going on the right piece, because this is the top, so we need our pineapples pointing that way. Now, obviously, on the original box, I had a paper that was non-directional. So I've got snail there. And so it's not as important to worry about the direction. I think there may have been some writing on it, but frankly, it was so faint that nobody was going to see it. Pulling paper off with my snail. That's not good. So, yes, if you're working with a non-directional, it's much, much easier. It also means I would have been able to use the paper I had originally planned on using had I not realised that that was also directional. Pineapples that way. Oh, it's got a pineapple. It's got the top of a pineapple there. So that would have been easy for me to see had I looked. Now this piece, obviously it doesn't matter which way up you put it, because it's going to be the right way up one way and the wrong way up the other way. And I'm then going to be using a card that is going to cut across the paper, the pattern anyway. So who cares? who cares? Life is too short. But obviously if I could have had the paper running that way, it would have been better, but I didn't have enough. Right, so that's all of the paper stuck on, so I might as well make my lid as it's here. I'm going to use multi-purpose adhesive, so I'm just going to add a thin layer, and you do really want a thin layer, you don't want lots, and just make sure that that has got a straight line on it, because that's where the seam is going to be. So that is where this side is going to come over here, so I need to make sure that I've definitely got glue there. I love this paper. I'm hoping that it's still available, so if you love it as much as me, you can use it. You can get it before it's gone. I couldn't even tell you whether it's reduced in price. I haven't managed to check. Sorry. Right, so to make your box, pull your flap in just with the corner and then line your cut edge against your folded edge so that it's straight. And this is where trimming away the little wedge means that you're not getting bits sticking up. And all you do is continue round. So each corner, just stick it in, stick it down. And then the last one is the only one that's slightly fiddly. Oh, except it's not. Had this been sticking out, you'd have had to have bent it in, but it was in the right place. And then having stuck those down, I just grab my bone folder and make sure that that is really well pressed down, particularly into the corner, because that's where you don't want any gapping. I'll just give that one another press. You don't want this to lift, so that's why you want to make sure that there's glue there, and you want to give it a really good press. And then we're doing exactly the same thing with this one, so it's just a bigger area. So hopefully I've got enough adhesive in my pot. I do have a spare just in case. So again, just get a nice little edge there so that you know you've got glue where it's going to really matter. And then this is just so that it stays flat. So glue there. And so it stays flat. I mean, it does help adhere it as well, but it's less important where this scribble goes as opposed to that line, which really does matter. Okay, so fold in and line up to the score line. So that is straight. And again, onto the score line, and again, and this is where I need to get that one sort of going in when I bring this one up. You can fiddle it round, but it's a bit of a, you do have to fight the card. So if you can get that last edge in, or that last flap in, before you put the second to last one in, it does help. And then again, burnish or press, whichever word you want to use. You just want to make sure that's really well stuck down. And you can see, hopefully you can see, that because we've wedged this away, you get a nice flat edge. Pop the lid on there. This then fits onto the base, and you get that lovely, neat finish. This is not, you know, loose. You can hold the base and the top doesn't instantly fall off, but equally you don't have to fiddle to get the lid on. And this is where, apologies, we are going against the pattern, but I ran out of paper. So, dimensionals in the corners and one in the middle. This is only for effect, so it doesn't matter if we only use a few dimensionals. If I was putting this on the front of a card, I would probably put 2 extra ones in, well, 3 extra ones in, because I do 2 down, 1 at each corner, 1 in the middle of the side, and then 1 there and 1 there. But this is only to go on the top of a box as a little bit of decoration, so it's not quite the same thing. And there we are. So that is our brighter version. And let me bring in the original version. So just by changing up the products that I've used, so the suite that I've used, we get a completely different feel. So I hope you've enjoyed that. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. As I say, subscribe if you would like to. It's down in the bottom right hand corner. I am aiming at the moment for 9,000 subscribers. I need another 505. So fingers crossed. When I get to 9,000, I definitely have a really nice giveaway planned, a little competition. So it'll be a prize draw. And so yes, I can only sell to the UK, but if you're in the UK, if you would like any of these products or any other Stampin' Up products, I would be thrilled to let you try out my customer service. As a rule, I get my thank you gifts out the first week of the following month. Unfortunately, because we had a problem with the warehouse in Germany at the back end of last month, things have been a bit delayed, so they'll be going out next week, beginning part of next week. They have just arrived, and I will be getting those out so that they should be with you next week. If you're not in the UK, if you would like to support me by subscribing, that would be fantastic. And as I say, the subscription button is in the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much indeed for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon.